That right? All right, so thank you all. We'll do the Texas y'all for coming. Today we're going to talk about change as an act of survival. Let's go through this a little bit. So a little bit about me. I've been in the industry 30 years. I have been through startups, financial. I've been on a couple of boards. And the one consistent thing about me is change. And that is something that you'll see all the way through this. The way we do work today is blamed primarily on the new generation. We like to blame Gen X and all of those, but the how, when, and why we work is changing dramatically. Things like Evernote, Twitter, Slack, all these new tools that are coming out are being developed in the consumer industry, migrated over into enterprise, and people expect them when they come. Right? They expect them when they get there. So what happens is they start interviewing companies around what tools do they get? Am I on an old IBM laptop using Lotus Notes, or do I actually get to use the stuff that I'm, working with and happy with? So if you don't think that cloud transformation is happening, I'll give you a couple stats. We got 40% of enterprise has adopted some form of cloud. Now, normally here I'm going to ask, who in the audience likes the term cloud? I truthfully hate it because it doesn't tell you what you get. It's like this marketing term that's used to encompass everything. I like as a service, software as a service, infrastructure as a service, whatever it is as a service. Tells you what you get and how you get it. O365 is the juggernaut for the cloud movement. We used to see massive amounts of YouTube being used on corporate networks because they like to do audio playlists and then minimize the window and stream 4K video that they're not watching. That used to be the big one. We're seeing almost 16 petabytes a month of O365 traffic. When Microsoft came through and said, we will take Exchange off your hands and run it for you, everybody ran to the door. Get it out. They shoved it out as fast as they could. AWS, there's over 2 million enterprise customers on AWS alone. And then 80% of employees will admit to using what we call shadow IT. Shadow IT really is just a good employee that's trying to do their job and actually have a credit card. So it is massively, massively well underway. This cloud shift will affect about $1 trillion in IT spend by 2020. So by next year, IT budgets totaling $1 trillion are going to be affected in either cutting back, adding to, moving over. We've got, as I said, over 80% of the 1,001 enterprises with 1,000 employees or more are using, testing, or looking at AWS. And we have 50% of new software is now alternative consumption. That means you're not getting the disk and installing it somewhere. The mobile enterprise. This is the thing that has really, really driven home the need for a mobile strategy around everything we do. The data that is traversing mobility right now is astronomical. When 5G comes in, it will go exponentially larger. I actually had to look up what an exabyte was, but they estimate by 2021 something on the order of 49 exabytes a month in data. And an exabyte's like 1,000 petabytes. I mean, that's massive, massive transactions, all running across a mobile device that's wandering around out there. So, not sure what your opinion of Edward Snowden is, and regardless of what you think of him, he drove encryption. He exposed everybody's need and desire for encryption. Now we have Google running encryption by default, etc. We see 83% of our traffic is encrypted. We process 65 billion transactions every day, 83% of which is encrypted. It is a massive movement. 74% of the blocked SSL certificates are domain validated certificates. DV certificates, do you know what they are? Okay, so a domain validated certificate is a certificate that is assigned based on control of the domain. So I own www.table.com. They send me an email. I say, yes, I got it. I've shown control of the domain. I now get an SSL certificate. In the IT world, for years, corporate IT kept telling people, if you do anything important on the web, look for the little green lock, right? Make sure there's a good, valid certificate. These are completely valid certificates that threat actors are all buying up or sometimes getting for free. And in reality, if you look at something like PayPal, there's over 3,000 domain certificates out there with the word PayPal in them that PayPal does not control. right? So that's where these things are starting to go. If you look at the actual malware callbacks, the bad guys realized the easiest way to get out of an environment is to go through SSL, because nobody's opening it up. They don't crack SSL. It's expensive and hard to crack. Banking Trojans, of course, the first one to go after it. Almost 60% of the Trojans we see today now exfil either command and control traffic or data back out through SSL. The other big one, phishing attacks. 300% increase in phishing attacks. This is number one on FBI's list. And 86% of all Google traffic. Yeah. And if you want to ask a question, by all means. Yeah, I can get you a copy of the slides afterwards. Not a problem. What we've created is the Bermuda Triangle, what I call the unholy trinity, because we have this world of mobility where data is roaming around out there on networks that we don't control, right? We have SSL encryption for what is on our networks, and we are in systems that we don't have operational control over. We have somebody else's computer, we have somebody else's network, and we have somebody else's crypto. That's the world IT built, and that they expect the security people to now secure. And it's no wonder that we see breach after breach after breach. So if you look at a change in the way we do business, let's go back a little bit to 2010. This was state of the art in 2010. And you actually may see one of your devices up here. We were doing DNS scrubbing, we were doing next-gen firewall, we had IPS that was being done to manage what was happening in there. We would throw in some SSL proxies and some load balancers to handle it. We'd do full antivirus, 100 megabit, tear through it, make sure that we were getting stuff done. Looking for signatures, DLP to make sure the good stuff was not going out. We would then throw on some more load balancers and then sandbox one file every 5 minutes. State of the art 2010, and it worked. There's no denying it worked, right? But the world changed, and that became the problem, right? We started using way more outbound communications than in 2010 and 2017. And if you look in 2017, well, actually one of the problems that we did have was the control, enforce, and log was all separate, right? So that's where we were talking about SIMs to collate things together, to bring it single pane of glass. How did we look at it? And we had some problems, but again, still able to manage it. 2017, we virtualized the hell out of everything. It was an easy fix. Handled the horizontal scalability issue. It did not handle the control, enforce, and log disparity. It did not handle the other portions of mobility. Come on in. So the question then became, what were we going to do? Well, I took this from a Global 1000. This was one of my customers. They gave me permission to use it. This is what their world was. They started building out, and I'll let this thing build as we go. They started building out what their stack looked like every time somebody clicked on something that was on the web. HTTP or HTTPS, right? Still building? Still building. And this is what they did. And it wasn't bad when we used a little bit of Google and maybe something that was out there. But when most of our transactions started to move out to Box, Dropbox, Salesforce, SuccessFactors, et cetera, every click had to go through 28 extra hops. 14 out, 14 in. Added to every single click. That is a massive amount of latency. And it was because we were addressing a modern problem with an old technology, like an old architecture, right? That became the fundamental issue. We would look at more and more usage out there, and we'd see more and more malware, more and more viruses, more and more attack vectors. Then we took our employees and partners. We started saying to our partners, we need you to remote in. We don't want you coming on site. In fact, we're going to take a whole bunch of our employees. We're just going to chuck them out, right? Salespeople should not have a desk at the office, became the mantra. There should be 6 hotel desks for every 24 salespeople, because the salespeople should be out there selling. And then other employees start going, well, hey, I want to work from home as well. And that's actually a really powerful tool for an enterprise, because no heating, no cooling, no facility management, no washrooms, no coffee, no, all the things that you spend money on, you don't have to when they work from home. No bandwidth. Use your own bandwidth at home. Right? So we started sending all this stuff out. Then we thought, okay, let's just take all of our applications, we'll chuck those out as well. So O365, HR, all these apps started to move out to these cloud services. And then we took the infrastructure as well, went to AWS, Google, and Azure. That's what we were left with. Great stack, 2010 stack that did what it was supposed to. There was nothing behind it. There was nobody going out through it. These are the problem. Millennials. These are the guys that are 35% of today's workforce and have a completely different understanding of how to work. They don't work 9 to 5. They work all the time. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week when they are doing it. And they intersperse the rest of their life with it. It is not a work-life balance. It is a balanced life. right? It is a different mentality. So what do we do in security? We grabbed hold of them, slapped a VPN on them, and dragged them back to the network. It's the only way to get them back through the stack. We would take them, we would take internal apps in the data center, we'd haul them back in through standard VPN, bring them in, send the traffic, no big deal, wasn't that great, but it worked. And then we started doing all these cloud-based solutions. Okay, well, we'll do site-to-site VPN between our site and their site. We'll take that VPN traffic and we will hairpin it back through us, send it back out through the site-to-site VPN to the cloud service, back to the data center, and then back out. That does not work if your data center is in, I don't know, California and your CEO is in, say, Russia. Or they're traveling in Europe and you're hairpinning them. There is no, this is what we did to our users. And when your CEO is banging his head on the desk, they're punching holes in your security. So we started doing split tunnel VPNs. Right? WannaCry thanked everybody for a split tunnel VPN because that gave us access to the outside world and the inside world at the same time, straight through. So if we do this to our users, is it any surprise that they want to work from coffee shops, they want to work from home? Right? No. They need to get out. So let's talk about home for a second, because this is probably one of the biggest threat vectors we face in corporate today. This person's home. So you remember that stack that we had? Let's pretend the stack is still there, still good. We still love it, it still works. But when they go home, what do they have? That. That is their stack, right? You've taken all that security, placed it on a laptop, sent that, all that data, placed it on a laptop, sent that user home with all that access, all the privileges, all the credentials, all the access there, and they're being protected by, anybody here from Netgear? A Netgear router, right? This probably sitting with default configuration. Thankfully, the vendors are at least starting to realize, they'll turn default to deny any, that type of control is turned on, but it's still got default passwords on it. And when you think about what's happening at home, what do you have? You can have IoT, you can have Wi-Fi, guest Wi-Fi, you can have a incredible amount of technology at home. In fact, a typical home nowadays probably is more technologically advanced than a corporate environment, because corporate is going to have 3-5 year depreciation. At home, we have 3 to 5 month depreciation, right? We see something new, something cool, and we buy it. If you look at my house, I got 3 separate Wi-Fi networks, right? I've got IoT, guest, and home, right? I've at least split those out. There are 27 devices in my house. That's average 9 IoT devices per user in my house. Standard corporate average is 3. I am triple the standard corporate average of IoT devices in my home. And when you think about what happens at home, we make life decisions at home. We have storage of files, photos, we do our taxes, right? We make banking decisions. We do a lot of work at home because there is no work-life balance anymore. We're expected to work all the time. This is happening in this house. So that great big stack that we built that seemed really good and did work when we were there is no longer following us here either. And the truth is that technology is no longer the domain of the CIO. Every employee you have is their own CIO, CTO, and CISO, because they are making these decisions at home. So, we've seen the changes at home. What about the way we're attacked? There are a wonderful amount of ways we can be attacked. Absolutely incredible. The rise of the SSL attack has been massive. In fact, that 60% is now 83%, I believe, now, 84%. It is incredible how fast this goes up. It's so fast that I've got to find a way to actually just auto-update this slide every week, because it is just dramatically pushing its way up. The SSL was designed to protect us, but it gave a blind spot to the corporate, so that way the threat actor could use it. Business email compromise, FBI's #1 current problem. There is something on the order of $12 billion has been exfilled on business email compromises, simply from people trying to be helpful or afraid of their boss. Usually it's one or the other. When you look at it, 12 billion reported in losses. When you look at phishing for credentials, again, this is simple because the domain validated credentials create the little lock. It looks good. They will pull all the design, all the images straight from the real website, and the users are trying to get through this, and we're hammering away at them with password after password after account. Single sign-on and password managers are 2 of the best things that you can buy for your employees, right? single sign-on so that they don't go through this, and it protects them from this, and the password manager to give them that ability to have strong passwords, and then throw two-factor on top of that. Malware as a service. If anybody ever still in this day and age, and I do strangely still get the question, is software as a service, is cloud a viable solution? The threat actors use it all the time. This is Satan. These are real, honest screenshots of Satan off the dark web. You can go on, Tor browser, Bitcoin account, and you too can be well, I'll call them criminals. You'll actually see I don't use the word hacker in here, because hackers are people that actually fix things, in my opinion. I'm a hacker, always have been. Hackers are not threat actors. Threat actors are simply criminals. And this proves it. Like, I mean, if I go on there and use this, I am not in any way intelligent, smart, or creating some new thing. I am renting a solution from somebody else. They come with multiple language support. They've got great help desk. And in fact, you can actually find they have Zendesk accounts as well, which is, I just found that out last week, which I thought was brilliant and scary at the same time. Ransomware, massive, massive problem. Has been, will continue to be, as long as we pay. We can make ransomware go away tomorrow if everybody stops paying. Don't pay. And there's been some really interesting attacks when we heard about the attacks on the Port of San Diego, the attack on Colorado. Neither one of them paid, which was very smart. You need to have strong backup solution, off-site backup solution, and you need to test your backup solution. You need to know that it works. Some of these things are pretty amazing when you think about the marketing strategy and campaigns that go around. And Popcorn Flicks was really impressive because if it infected you, you could pay, or you could infect two of your friends, and if they paid, yours was free. That is straight out of marketing. It's multi-level marketing, right? Stampato is nasty. It just played Russian roulette with your files. It would simply delete one of your files every 6 minutes every 6 hours until you paid. You know, and when we're trying to recover this, we're not looking for the whole machine. There's something on there that's important to us, whether it's our taxes, photos of a wedding, children, whatever. There's something that's important, and they're randomly deleting them, and you don't know which one they delete until you pay. It also posed as a decryptor for another ransomware. So even though you decrypted, you found that you were still encrypted by the original encryptor, which in my opinion is just plain nasty. When ransomware meets IoT, that's when we end up in a huge problem, right? I mean, if you think encrypting your photos is bad, imagine encrypting your pacemaker. I mean, the thought. There are, 300 third-party libraries that had 8,600 known documented vulnerabilities in the software used to make pacemakers. Now, the medical industry has very strict controls on patching because it changes validated systems. If it's patched, it's no longer validated. You have to go through the process again. You can't put usernames and passwords on a pacemaker because if somebody's in cardiac arrest, you need to know the data that's on there. And in fact, they actually store your private information, your PHI, on the pacemaker so they can use the one and pick it up. But it's keeping you alive. Now, will somebody use it to attack somebody? Maybe not. Maybe. More than likely, they're going to go after Tesla or somebody else, and they're going to lock your car. And in the morning, when you come out to go to work or to go to the job interview, figure a coordinated attack between a calendar app and a Tesla, find out when the job interview is happening, lock the car right before it, they will pay, right? You need to create panic, you need to create urgency, and that will cause them to pay. IoT is going to hit something on the order of 21 billion devices in the next 3 years. Now, if you fathom what we did to the internet and the world when we brought a whole bunch of Microsoft machines, connected them to the internet with no firewalls, no security, and just laid them out there, and then we saw the building of botnets like Conficker, stuff like that. It took years. Conficker made it to 12 million nodes. It took about 6 years to do that. Reaper, which was the follow-up to Mirai, took exactly 3 months to make 2 million nodes. And we're going to have 21 billion of these devices out there connected to the internet with IP addresses. That's the world we are headed towards. So what could you do with one of these? You know, you think about it. You can ransomware, right? You know, I'm going to make it really hot. Figure Texas, turn up your heat in the middle of the summer, right? Somebody might pay. Mirai, that was used as an attack. DDoS, single largest DDoS in the history of the internet, was created by 27,000 devices, costing the average user about $13 at home. Yeah, $13.49. That's what it cost the average user. They don't know that they did. That was electricity and bandwidth. But they had no idea that they were involved in that. You could do BrickerBot. So the guy that built BrickerBot was to try and get these devices off the internet. So if you didn't patch your device, he would brick it. So that way it couldn't be used in Mirai. So then they took that code and now they threaten to brick your device if you don't pay, right? So as everything good gets turned around. And if you think about the impact of a single wrong download, the infections happen quickly. They happen in minutes and seconds, right? In fact, we saw some stats earlier today from Logarithm that said that the average dwell time on a network is about 101 days, right? That's how long they're sitting on your network doing stuff. And you can see the infections happen in minutes and seconds. Data exfiltration happens within days. The realization of it is when Brian Krebs calls you 2 years later. That's when you start to realize what has happened. We are seeing a continual increase in the cost. It's up to $7 million, and it's been about a 30% increase since 2013. So the question is then, what do we do? First and foremost, we have to get out of our own way. If we're not going to admit to our own bullshit, we are never going to figure this out, because we, not only the industry, vendors, CISOs, have this belief that we know everything and we can do everything. And until we change that, we will never fix it. So first, patch your systems. That has nothing to do with anything I've talked about earlier. This is a fundamental problem in our industry as a technical organization. People are not patching. I'm not saying patch everything for no reason. What I'm saying is understand your inventory and patch it appropriately. Again, WannaCry was because they were running a protocol that was deprecated, that was not being used by anybody in the wild because they didn't know what their inventory was and they hadn't patched. Everybody kept saying WannaCry was a 0-day. It was not. There was a patch released for it. It could have been fixed. We have to admit that the network is irrelevant. Now, what I mean by that is I don't mean that we forget about the network and blow it all up or let it all be open. What we have to stop trying to do is look at the environment that we're working in. We have to realize that the network is no longer under our control. And if it is, it's probably encrypted. So we have to stop using the network as a methodology for trying to protect our users. Definitely protect our networks. Have to do that. But you cannot protect the users strictly using a network. Implement a platform-based strategy. It is critical that these are done at a platform level. The days of Castle and Moat, they worked, they don't work today. We have to realize that we are a mobile environment. So you have to understand where your data is going, and you have to understand who's touching your data. And you apply your policies consistently based on data and user. Absolutely trust nothing. We talk about zero trust. There is an extension of zero trust that's called CARTA. We can talk about that later if you want. But you can't trust anything, because even hashes today are good for about 58 seconds. That's how fast they can recycle old malware. Not 0-day, old malware will slip right through any signature-based solution because they can churn them out so quickly. The new reality is that you've got one network in the world. It's the internet. That is your new corporate network. You do not control it. Services are going to be consumed on it, and you can't secure it. That's the world we live in. It requires an architectural transformation. We have to stop thinking the old way, and we have to look at fundamentally changing the architecture that we are looking at and how we apply security. And then you have to question everything. You can accept nothing at face value. If you do, you're going to get caught. The reality is if you cause change, you will lead. If you accept change, you might survive. If you resist it, you die. I love Ray Norda. If you don't believe me, here's the truth of it. 54% of the Fortune 500 companies from 20 years ago do not make the cut. It's what happens. I mean, BlackBerry's an interesting one. They're up there. I'm Canadian. I loved BlackBerry. I used every BlackBerry there was until they wouldn't put a touch screen on it. And that's when I moved to an iPhone. They're now in the security game with Silence. Silence? Yeah. Silence. Still don't understand that one. We'll figure it out. We'll see. But there's a change, right? I would love to see them use that change to make it back to the other side. So somebody there is thinking. They know that they can't keep doing the same thing, because I've also seen that big brick of a BlackBerry that's out there. One of my employees has it. It's frightening. So with that, I'll say thank you, and if there's questions, I'm happy to take them.
Great presentation. It was. It was, because you just went straight through the slides. You material and it was great.
Thank you.
So when you say legacy, you got to go to policy-based solutions today. What are your top 3 solutions that are popular today?
Platform-based solutions based on policy? Well, Zscaler is one of them.
Okay.
It's actually the one. Trying to think of another one.
No surprise there.
Is there another one? Is there another one? It really depends on what environment you're in, what maturity level you're in, tearing
That's
everything
true.
out, right? Like,
So if you're hybrid,
everybody is going to be a hybrid solution. Not everything belongs in the cloud.
right?
Now, there are these startups that are being built with nothing, where they have no servers at home and all that stuff. Great, good for them. But if you go to like, Lockheed or Bombardier, no. There's stuff that they're not going to trust people with, because security people now have to think about this as true risk people. In fact, if I could have my way, I would love if the CISO title disappeared. Because the CISO title focuses security into one person, one group, one area. It makes it not the responsibility of other people. And then we go out and say we're going to engage our users and say that they're part of our solution and we'll deputize them, or everybody is our last line of defense. It doesn't work that way when you think about it, right? The police don't do that with you. They don't make you a deputy and say, you're our eyes and ears on the street. No, you're a citizen and you know the rules and you operate within them, and they will help enforce, right? And that's where we've got this sort of mishmash of how we do stuff. So does everything belong in the cloud? Absolutely not. You have to look at what's important to you, right? If you go to GE and ask them what's important at GE, they will tell you intellectual property. And they will be very specific. The jet engines, that intellectual property is important. The washing machines, not so much. If a compromise happens in the area that the washing machines are built in, they will re-image a machine and continue and go. Because if they lose that IP, yes, that's an impact to the bottom line, but it's a very small impact versus if they lose the IP to the jet engine. So now they can focus their security there.
So knowing that Zscaler has a CASB function as well, and you had a slide that said patch everything.
Yes.
That you can't, because there are IoT devices that you cannot.
Correct.
So what do you recommend when you're stuck with that kind of situation?
Inspect it all. So one of the things that we look at is how do we inspect all traffic going out, right? Not some, all of it. Crack SSL, open it up, make reasonable decisions too, right? So if you are in the table manufacturing business, I'm not going to recommend you open health information or banking.
Right.
Because the destination, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Kaiser, we're going to not trust them. We're going to accept the risk of communicating with them without inspecting it. We're going to accept that risk because the risk of unencrypting that traffic is greater to me as an organization than it is what may happen. I'll take that risk. But Google, Hotmail, whatever, Facebook, Twitter, all that, I'm opening all of it up. And I'll let my employees know that. I'll say to them, look, here's what we're doing at work. If there's something that you're doing at work that you don't want me to look at, don't do it at work. Do it at home, right? Do it somewhere else. Do it on a personal device. So that helps them understand that this is not, I'm not snooping on them. I don't care what they're doing at work. We have an open policy, but I have to be able to inspect it for malware. I have to be able to inspect it for appropriate traffic.
Yep. Agreed. Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions?
Question about
Yeah.
the SSL inspection. Is it inbound, outbound, and also to what degree? Because I'm wondering, like, is your device capable of basically decrypting and
Yes.
inspecting all the way from layer 2 through 7?
Yes, so we take all outbound and then return traffic. So nothing from the outbound initiated in. That's not our world. If you're talking about sitting in front of www.mysite.com, not us. That's somebody else's game. But if I go to facebook.com, yes, we open every stream and we open in real time. And we are capable of scaling to 65 billion transactions. 83% of our traffic right now is decrypted in real time.
Okay.
What method do you use for that decryption? Is it static keys or using man in the middle?
It's a man in the middle.
Man in the
Yep.
middle. What about certificate pins? How do you handle that?
Nobody, same way everybody else does, bypass. And then explain to the vendors, and Dropbox and Box figured it out. The customers will vote with their dollars. An enterprise that is not allowed to look at something because they pinned a certificate, do you want to do business with them? Would you go on an airline that allowed somebody to put a piece of luggage on there that they can't look inside? No. And that's what it is. I may not open it, but I may have to x-ray it. There's different levels at which I'm going to look at it, but I need to have the ability to look in there. If you forbid me, if you create a lead box with an unbreakable lock and try to put that on a plane, it's not getting on my plane. Somebody else wants to let it on, so be it, but that's a risk that is unacceptable.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So you mentioned the SSL decryption. Is that passive or is it inline?
It's inline. Yeah, everything goes through us. Same with sandboxing. So if you want to sandbox stuff, we have the ability to actually quarantine a file. So we can stop it going to the user before it gets to them if it's a high-risk file or maybe a high-value target.
So yeah, okay, it's a little late. So it's a cloud or it's a appliance?
Cloud, no appliance. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The most you'll get is an app that you can put on a device. So app on the iPhone, and it actually wasn't even mentioned in this because I don't do product. There's a table out there. We can give you the whole product rundown as well if you'd like.
So it's an agent on all your clients or?
Agents, iOS, Android, Windows, and Mac, OS X.
Okay.
So we can do agent-based. We do GRE tunnel out of corporate environment as well. That's what we recommend. And the agent's aware, so it will basically deprecate itself if it's in a corporate environment that's doing GRE routing to us.
So, basically SSL proxy is one of the capabilities, right?
Yep.
So, I guess what are the other areas, or what kind of makes your solution stand out? What's unique? What's kind of your key differentiator? Why Zscaler?
Why Zscaler? Because we are in 100 data centers globally, and that policy applies every time at all times. So that stack is now following you around the world. So yes, we've got a CASB in there. Yes, we've got DLP, SSL decrypt, sandboxing, bandwidth control, the regular stuff that you'll find in a stack. I mean, there's nothing magic in that. Like, I mean, we have the right pieces, but it's applied all the time, always, right? And that's
And part of government that the 100 data centers don't apply. You're a government agency, you typically lock it down to just the US, like all of our agencies do that. But that cloud also allows for all that remote mobile user coverage. So that's one of the number one use cases for my cities and counties. I'm not only protecting my employees when they're at work, but when they leave, when they're at a conference, when they're at Starbucks, when they're at home, I've got full visibility, full coverage to my employees, no matter where they're at, no matter what device they're using. Whether it's a laptop or an iPad or an Android phone, the in-user perspective, it's consistent what they can and cannot do. And from an IT perspective, there's a consistent level of visibility and control, no matter where they're at, no matter what device they use. And that cloud allows that ability to happen. So that's one of the biggest SSL, as we mentioned. The other big use case, and who are you with?
I'm with F5.
Are you with F5? Okay. So one of the other big use cases with our government agencies is just around the counties, or there's usually typically a centralized IT department, and then there's various departments within the city or county. So we allow that visibility across the board for across the whole county, the whole city level as well.
And if you think about the convergence, like, I mean, just think about threat intel, right? For years, we've tried to get threat intel that we could share and actually use. With 65 billion transactions, we do 120,000 security updates a day into that cloud. It converges within 3 minutes globally. So if you're hit while you're on vacation in Aruba and you get tagged by a piece of malware, we see it, we analyze it, we denote it as bad, that gets pushed through the entire cloud, all the customers are protected. It is actionable threat intel.
So it's like next generation for Indian kind of, but you have like URL or IP intelligence.
They're definitely not MDM, but
I'm
it's,
just kind of wondering, because I know a lot of companies invested in it, and that was like the hot thing a couple of years ago.
yeah.
But
But
I'm wondering how it evolves.
Mobile data like the device management, or
Well, because a lot of people think that because they have mobile device management, the devices are protected.
Oh,
It does,
yeah.
So it does like device level
Yeah.
checks and stuff.
yeah. It helps. It is part of the defense in depth for sure. but it is not the be-all and end-all. Unless you're inspecting the communications back and forth. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. And if you want, happy to share a copy of the slides with you if